Attila and the Fall of the Roman Empire. Written by David L. Dreyer. The Roman Empire. Beginning around 27 BCE, Roman armies spread across Western Europe and conquered much of the ancient world. The Roman Empire was born. It ruled for close to 5 centuries. But by around 350 CE, the empire was growing old and difficult to rule. It covered so much land that it took 2 emperors to govern it. One emperor ruled in the west from the city of Rome. The other, Valens, ruled in the east from Constantinople. Constantinople is now known as Istanbul in the country of Turkey. In 376 CE, a messenger brought some bad news to Roman Emperor Valens. The messenger said that large numbers of Germanic people, called the Visigoths, were pouring into the Roman Empire. They were seeking protection from a new enemy from the east, the Huns. This was the first time that the Roman world had heard of the Huns. For the past 6 years, the Huns had been moving toward the lands around the Black Sea. Their successful military campaigns caused population shifts and great movements of people, including the Visigoths. Some Visigoth refugees were allowed to settle in the Eastern Roman Empire, but the Romans treated the refugees badly. The angry Visigoths rebelled. For 2 years, they rampaged through part of the Eastern Empire, causing great destruction. Emperor Valens led an army to stop the uprising, but the Visigoths destroyed his army, and Valens was killed. The loss of Valens made the Roman Empire weaker. Without a central leader, the Romans failed to defend their territories. The Visigoths sacked the city of Rome in 410 CE. The defeat marked the beginning of the end for the Roman Empire. The Huns. The Huns were bands of warriors that became the deadliest enemy Rome had ever seen. Historians do not agree about where the Huns came from. Wherever they came from, the Eurasian tribes that made up the Huns were of diverse backgrounds with Turkic-speaking leadership. As early as 380 CE, the Roman army had hired the Huns. The Huns learned about siege warfare from the Roman army and later used this knowledge to destroy whole cities. Like all empires, the Huns were driven by the desire for land and power. In battle, the Romans were no match for the Huns. By the 420s CE, the new Eastern Roman Emperor, Theodosius II, was already paying the Huns a large amount of gold each year to keep the peace. In 433 CE, Attila or Attila, became the ruler of the Huns and the Germanic people the Huns had conquered. Attila entered into a treaty with Theodosius that continued the Roman payment to the Huns. Attila's rise. Attila was the Huns' most famous leader. Born into a noble family, Attila knew how to speak and maybe read Gothic and Latin. He was in his late 30s when he became leader. Some people who met Attila said that he had very simple tastes. He ate and participated in feasts in moderation. Attila's soldiers showed off their wealth, decorating their horses and armor. But Attila wore plain clothes and used wooden cups, saving gold cups for guests. Attila was able to unify the Hun fighting force like no one had before. His armies had many exceptional horse archers. They were feared for whirlwind attacks in which they seemed to disappear. They moved fast in battle and fought in a pattern that confused their enemies, keeping them on the run. Under Attila, the Huns were almost impossible to defeat. They crushed nearly every army ever sent against them. In 441 CE, the Roman armies were distracted, fighting in Sicily and North Africa. Attila broke the treaty he had made with Rome, destroying Roman cities until he came close to invading Constantinople. One Roman city after another was reduced to ruins, and the Huns killed thousands of people. To stop the destruction and killing, Theodosius agreed to double the payment of gold. The Huns would receive about 950 kilograms, 2,100 pounds of gold each year. But when Theodosius died in 450 CE, the new Eastern Roman Emperor, Marcian, stopped any further payments. Rather than attack the Eastern Empire, which he already drained of wealth, Attila turned his attention to the wealthier Western Roman Empire. Attila and Honoria. In 450 CE, Attila received a letter from Justa Grata Honoria, sister of the Western Emperor Valentinian III. Honoria was smart, and she wanted her brother's power. She had a secret romance with a servant. People believed Honoria wanted the servant to overthrow Valentinian III and become emperor. The servant was executed, and Honoria was forced into an engagement with a man chosen by her brother. Desperate to be free, she begged Attila for help and sent her ring as proof that she wrote the letter. Attila considered Honoria's letter and ring a proposal of marriage. He agreed to marry the young princess, saying that she had done nothing wrong. As a dowry, he demanded half of the Western Roman Empire. However, Honoria's brother Valentinian III refused Attila's request. Attila then declared that he would take the Western Roman Empire by force. Attila gathered an army of about 100,000 men, including both Huns and Germanic allies. In early 451 CE, Attila and his army crossed the Rhine River into Gaul, modern-day France. For several months, the Huns sacked and burned the cities they conquered. They killed men, women, and children without mercy. The last of the Romans. The Roman Empire had one great general remaining. His name was Flavius Aetius, and he served in the court of Valentinian III. He is usually just called Aetius. As the Western Empire crumbled, Aetius did all he could to hold the empire together. For these efforts, he has been remembered as the last of the Romans. With the advance of Attila through Gaul, Aetius scrambled to raise an army. Arguing that Attila was the enemy of humanity, Aetius got some of the Germanic tribes living in Gaul to join forces with him. These new allies included a large force of Visigoths under the command of their king, Theodoric. Aetius's army was now about as large as Attila's. In the late spring of 451 CE, the Roman general led his forces to fight Attila and the Huns. Thinking critically, Aetius needed a larger army to fight the Huns, so he convinced men from Gaul to join the Roman army. Which is more important when fighting an enemy? Number of soldiers or talent? The Battle of Chalons. Aetius and his army caught up with Attila in late June outside the city of Orléans in modern-day France. Seeing the Roman forces, Attila retreated toward an open plain near the town of Chalons-sur-Marne. There, the two huge armies met in one of the greatest battles in history. The Battle of Chalons began in the afternoon. After firing arrows at each other, the two sides fought up close with swords, spears, and axes. By evening, when the fighting stopped, tens of thousands of men from both sides lay dead on the field. Among them was Theodoric. But there was no question about who had won. Aetius's army had defeated Attila. The next day, Aetius allowed Attila to retreat with the rest of his army. Scholars believe that Aetius failed to fully defeat Attila because he feared a complete Visigothic win as much as he feared a defeat. For Aetius, the best outcome was what happened. Theodoric dead, Attila in retreat, and the Romans appearing victorious. Attila and the Pope. In June of the following year, Attila led his army across the mountains into Italy. Attila still had plenty of men, and he still claimed he was married to Honoria. This time, Attila Aetius was unable to raise an army large enough to fight the Huns. Attila's army destroyed villages and cities across northern Italy and moved closer and closer to Rome. Aetius and Emperor Valentinian III decided to try diplomacy instead of battle. They asked Pope Leo I, the head of the Catholic Church, for his help. They wanted the Pope to meet with Attila and ask him to leave Italy. Pope Leo I met with Attila at the Huns' camp. What the two men said to each other was not recorded, but Attila agreed to stop his attacks. Some historians believe that Attila was in a weaker position than many people realized. His army had not fully recovered from the Battle of Chalons, and many of his men were dying of a plague. He was also running short of food and other supplies. Whatever Attila's reasons were, he left Italy, never to return. The end of the Huns. By 452 CE, Attila's empire included regions in present-day Russia, Hungary, Germany, and France. In 453, the end of the Huns. By 452 CE, Attila's empire included regions in present-day Russia, Hungary, Germany, and France. In 453 CE, Attila took a new bride, Ildiko. After a wedding day full of feasting, Attila and Ildiko went to bed. The next morning, Attila failed to come out of his bedroom. Worried servants entered his room and found Attila dead. During the night, the king had suffered a burst blood vessel in his nose or throat. Under Attila, the Huns became the most powerful and most feared military force in Europe. After Attila's death, however, the Huns' empire did not last. Attila's sons fought each other for leadership, divided the Huns, and squandered their wealth. The unified empire that Attila had built fell apart by 469 CE. While little record is left of the empire that Attila ruled, his personal legacy has thrived in history. Attila, although fearsome, is remembered as one of the most successful military and political leaders to have ever lived.
Good job!